Today's featured shirt is, yep, a boating accident. When Beto's thugs try to come and take your guns, well, you don't have those guns anymore, remember? Thanks to that tragic boating accident. And against all enemies, Republican and Democrat. These and over 90 other hard-hitting designs are available in the store, and you can get those designs on a shirt, hoodie, or a mug. Your link is in the description and in the pinned comment. The purpose of psychological operations in the U.S. is to induce or reinforce behavior favorable to globalist objectives. What are those objectives? Unquestioningly submit to the authorities, disarm yourself, keep working as a member of the tax cattle herd while the psycho criminals in government continue to bleed you of everything you've got, waste your resources, enrich and empower themselves, and wreak havoc on the world abroad. And more importantly, the objective of having you hand your rights over to them. The quintessential purveyors of these psychological operations are the corporate media overlords. I'm just going to show you a brief example of a double psychological operation. And I'll tell you ahead of time that the behavior they're trying to reinforce here is your consent to and protection of democracy. Remember, mainstream CIA-controlled Operation Mockingbird media is your enemy. That's all Mockingbird media.
We're nearing the end of our second full week of total saturation Ukraine coverage. That means every channel, every hour of the day.
Guys, this is true. And a huge part of what makes deception deceptive is that it employs the speaking of truth. This should go without saying, but liberal media is designed to appeal to the liberal mind. Conservative media is designed to appeal to the conservative mind. Obviously, both have a detectable bias. So what Carlson is doing here is calling out the obvious. Leftist media continues to bang the impeachment drums, but there's a reason behind it. The globalists have to keep you and I on the plantation, and they have to make sure that we keep begging for a new plantation master once in a number of years. Why? Because they know that if we continue to feel like we have power over our own destinies and remain oblivious to the fact that we keep casting our votes of support behind their pre-picked candidate, then our minds won't be free to consider who our real enemies are so that we can bring them to justice. But watch this trick of globalists as they use Carlson to perpetuate the exact same thing the Communist News Network and MSLSD perpetuates. And this is going to be a lengthy clip so you can get the picture.
So at this point, you'd think it would be obvious what exactly the fuss is about. After this much talking, you would assume every person in America would understand what crimes Donald Trump is being accused of committing. But no. Even now, the story still feels obscure and strangely light. There's nothing mysterious or weighty about it. We already know all of the facts. There's a transcript, and yet they still don't seem very shocking. And so maybe for that reason, our news anchors have been doing their very best to keep the blood pressure high. The game is boring, so the cheerleaders have to work overtime, twice as hard. For example, here was MSNBC's best attempt to get you to care.
I don't say this lightly. But let's be frank, a national nightmare is upon us. The basic rules of our democracy are under attack.
The basic rules of our democracy are under attack.
From the president. We begin tonight with a series of admissions by the president that all but assures his impeachment in the House of Representatives. This moment should arguably be a national emergency. The founding fathers would have considered it a national emergency if the president publicly lobbied multiple foreign governments to interfere in the next election. It's tough to say lightly, but this is the moment that we're at.
Well, I think a cliche bomb just went off. Try to ignore how hackneyed and badly written that speech was. The state of education in this country clearly is in rapid decline. Nobody can write a decent paragraph anymore. Someday we're going to do a special on that. But for now, consider the substance of what you just heard, to the extent there was any. The basic rules of our democracy are under attack. That's what they're telling you. So what exactly are the basic rules of our democracy? Well, the most basic rule of all is that the people rule. The people rule. In a democracy, the big decisions are made by voters in elections.
This is a lie. First of all, this country was not set up to be a democracy. At its inception, it was intended to be a representative constitutional republic. Democracies are majority rule situations, where the 51% gets to tell the 49% what to do, and if the 49% doesn't comply, then they're punished by the ruler of the 51%. Second, this isn't even really a democracy and hasn't been since at least 1913 when the Federal Reserve came online. The people can vote and say they're the ones who are in power all they want, but this is nothing more than an illusion. This is an oligarchy, the rule of the few over a country of many. So even Carlson propagated the poison of further enslavement.
They are not made by left-wing talk show hosts or by the Washington Post or even by high-level CIA employees acting anonymously as whistleblowers. No. In a democracy, the main decisions are made by citizens casting ballots. That, for example, is how you remove a president, by beating him in an election. That's always the way we did it here in America. Not anymore.
That sounds good on paper, but it's not true. Even if it was true, what Carlson described is a democracy scenario, where the will of the majority trumps the will of the minority. People vote or support the idea of a master ruling over themselves and others. Such an action is nothing more and nothing less than consenting to evil. And as long as we keep consenting to evil, our society cannot change for good.
So yes, our democracy is under attack. They're right about that. And yet, for all his faults, Donald Trump is not the attacker. But wait a second, they're telling you. We understand how grave a decision impeachment is. In fact, we're praying over it, people of faith that we are. But in this case, impeachment is unavoidable. Soliciting information from foreign countries is corrupt and evil. That's what they're telling you. Okay, fine. But let's at least acknowledge that this standard is a brand new standard. I mean, brand new standard, like 20 minutes ago. Because it wasn't that long ago, less than a year, you'll remember this, that all of American politics revolved around information solicited from foreign countries. It was called the Steele dossier. And back then, the press corps strongly approved of it.
The allegations in this Christopher Steele dossier, and you went through the timeline very well a few moments ago, are stunning.
There are actually substantial portions of what was in the Steele dossier, which was a raw intelligence document, that have indeed checked out.
Based on our own reporting and word from numerous official sources, the dossier, in fact, is far from bogus.
I think we're going to actually have to stop calling it the infamous dossier. Increasingly, it's the accurate dossier. Increasingly, it's the damning dossier. Increasingly, it's the dossier that is going to hang around the neck of the Trump administration and drag them down.
Oh, the dossier was totally fine. In case you've forgotten, and you may have forgotten, because why would you remember? But Christopher Steele, who wrote the dossier, was a foreign intelligence operative. He gathered his material abroad in foreign countries, some of it clearly from foreign government officials. At the time, that was absolutely fine with Democrats. They weren't embarrassed to say so.
So there's the double deception. Carlson is rightly ripping on the left-stream media for pretending to even care about their own sacred democratic arrangement, when what they really seek to do and have done is supplant their own so-called election process by taking power away from the people they say are really in control and commencing with their bogus impeachment process, thereby automatically taking power away from the people. It's all a sloppy, hypocritical mess. This is absolutely spot on. Carlson perfectly highlights the hypocrisy of the left in their pursuit to impeach Trump on the grounds of election interference by way of help from a foreign power, when all this time they condoned that exact same behavior with the Steele dossier. It's laughable.
Clinton campaign staffer Brian Fallon tweeted this. We could give you a million examples. Here's one. Here's his tweet. I regret I didn't know about Christopher Steele's hiring pre-election. If I had, I would have volunteered to go to Europe and try to help him. Oh, okay. And by the way, if foreign interference is such a concern, and by the way, it should be a concern, then why aren't we more worried about foreign companies sending de facto bribes to the family members of connected politicians? There are a lot of those. We're picking on Joe Biden's son because it's in the news, but it could be a lot of people's sons. Trust me. But in the case of Biden's son, nobody thinks he's an expert on Ukrainian energy policy. He got the gig because of his dad. It was influence peddling, obviously. In this case, that's okay, though, for some reason. So let's just be totally honest. Let's stop lying if we can, just for a second. I know it's hard in modern America where everyone's required to lie all the time, but let's just be honest for this one moment. In Washington right now, there are no actual rules. Partisans simply invent standards for the purpose of destroying their political enemies. Just today, Hillary Clinton tweeted this from a late Democratic member of Congress, this quote: "If the impeachment provision in the Constitution of the United States will not reach the offenses charged here, then perhaps that 18th century Constitution should be abandoned to a 20th century paper shredder."
Says the most corrupt woman the D.C. swamp has yet to belch from its stench-filled bowels. This woman has specialized in shredding the Constitution to this day.
In other words, if the process doesn't reach the outcome that Hillary Clinton wants it to reach, she thinks we ought to scrap the Constitution.
Yep, that's exactly what Clinton and Schiff and all the others think. By now, the slaves on the plantation should be restless, and they should realize that voting for new masters just sinks us deeper in debt, results in the loss of more of our freedoms, ends up beefing up the military-industrial complex, does nothing to stop the senseless drug war, or the prison-industrial complex, or the wars abroad on our dime. It doesn't put a halt to the domestic terror cell known as the IRS, or the Federal Reserve, or Israel's influence over us. It just drives us deeper into our slave mentality. And that's what they want to accomplish through their 24/7 psychological operation propaganda campaign. It's what keeps us paralyzed and drowning in the quicksand of our own cognitive dissonance. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the Google Thought Police in the comments section below. Before you go, check out our new shirt designs in the shirt store. Here's the Beta Hates America design. Hell no, you're not taking my AR-15. And nobody needs an AR-15. Well, nobody needs a whiny little bitch either. And yet, here you are. And against all enemies, Democrat and Republican. There are over 90 other kick-ass designs in the store, and the link's in the description. Your purchase supports the message of freedom on this channel. If you get something out of this content, help me beat YouTube's censorship algorithms by liking and sharing this video. And while you're here, why not watch a couple more of my videos? Until next time, stand firm, stay vigilant, and for the sake of all that is right and good, stop giving your rights away to tyrannical psychopaths who want to destroy this country.